In the remote forests of eastern Poland, hidden from the world by barbed wire and silence, stood a place called Sobibor. It was not a prison. It was not a camp for labor. It was a factory of death. In 1943, tens of thousands of men, women, and children were brought here, and almost none ever left. Every day, trains arrived. Every day, the same screams, the same smoke, the same silence afterward. The Germans who ran Sobibor believed it could never be broken. But one day, the people inside decided that, if they could not live as humans, they would at least die as free men. Among the prisoners was a Soviet officer named Alexander Pechersky, captured in 1941. He had already escaped from one German camp before being caught again and sent to Sobibor. When he arrived, he saw death everywhere. The guards treated life as nothing. Yet Pechersky saw something else, a spark in the eyes of the men around him. Jews from Poland, the Netherlands, France, Russia. They spoke different languages, came from different worlds, but they all shared the same fate. And one night, under the flickering light of the barracks, they began to plan. The idea was madness, to rise up, to kill the SS, to seize their weapons, and escape through the minefields into the forest. No one had ever escaped Sobibor. Everyone knew the price of failure. But Pechersky and a Polish Jew named Leon Feldhendler believed it was better to die fighting than to wait for the next train to the gas chambers. They began to organize, secretly, silently, under the eyes of the guards. They studied the camp's routines, who patrolled when, where the officers worked, where the weapons were kept. Every day, they watched and remembered. The plan had to be perfect, because they would only get one chance. Over the following weeks, carpenters sharpened their tools into knives, tailors smuggled scraps of wire, and prisoners whispered in the shadows, preparing for the day of revolt. That day came on October 14, 1943. The air was still, the camp strangely quiet. At exactly 4 p.m., the first step of the plan began. Prisoners invited SS officers, one by one, into workshops, under the pretense of fitting uniforms or repairing boots. Once inside, they were killed quickly and silently with axes and knives. One by one, the symbols of terror fell. For a brief moment, the prisoners began to believe it might actually work. But then, something went wrong. An officer discovered a body. The alarm sounded. Shouts and gunfire filled the air. The camp erupted into chaos. Men and women ran for the fences, for the gates, for the trees beyond. Bullets tore through the crowd. Mines exploded. People fell, but others kept running, climbing over barbed wire, crawling through the mud, screaming for freedom. Pechersky shouted above the gunfire, "To the forest! To the forest!" By the time the sun set, the camp was in flames. The guards were dead or fled. Of the 600 prisoners in Sobibor, about 300 made it out that day. Many were hunted down in the days that followed, caught by German patrols or killed by locals. But around 50 survivors truly escaped and lived to tell what happened, among them Alexander Pechersky. For the Nazis, Sobibor was no longer a secret. Within weeks, they destroyed what was left of the camp, bulldozed the grounds, planted trees, and erased it from maps. They wanted to bury the memory, but memory has a way of surviving. Years later, when the war was over, the world would finally hear the truth from the mouths of those who escaped. They spoke of courage, of fear, of friendship stronger than death. They spoke of the moment when doomed men rose up against the impossible and won their freedom. Even if only for a few hours. Sobibor was more than a camp. It was a symbol, proof that, even in the darkest heart of humanity, defiance could still exist. Alexander Pechersky lived to old age. When asked why he risked everything that day, he said, "We could not change our fate, but we could decide how we would meet it." In that forest, surrounded by fire and blood, hundreds chose to meet it standing. And though Sobibor itself vanished from the earth, the echo of that uprising, of men who refused to die quietly, still lingers in the wind over those woods.